Welcome to Great Loop Radio, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. This is Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today my guest will be Justin Joyner, who is the manager at Beneteau Powerboats, and we're going to chat a little bit about some of the advantages that you might not be aware of if you're buying a new boat versus a used boat for the Great Loop. So before I do officially bring in Justin, I want to take a minute and recognize our Admiral level sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. Our Admiral sponsors are Beneteau, Curtis Stokes and Associates, Dog River Marina, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. And with the business out of the way, Justin Joyner, thank you for joining me.
Well, it's a pleasure to chat with you today.
Yeah, and we wanted to cover this topic because you and I first met face-to-face at the AGLCA Fall Rendezvous a few months back, and you brought up the idea of a seminar that would kind of cover what people sometimes overlook when their first thought is to go to a used boat for the Great Loop, and that there are some advantages to buying new that perhaps aren't really obvious on the surface. So I thought that was a really intriguing idea and thought it would be a great topic for the podcast. So let's start. Tell us what some of those benefits are of buying a new boat over a used boat.
Well, to start, most customers head over to our dealerships looking for used boats, and that always kind of got me thinking, why does that happen? You see people pulling up in brand new cars, and let's face it, we're typically talking about a couple $100,000 purchase, upwards to a couple $1 million. So usually people have the means to spend a lot of money on a toy. Why do they tend to drift towards buying a used boat? So it really comes down to fear. Are they lighting a couple $100,000 on fire when they are buying a new boat? That depreciation word's a scary term. So really, what we found that is helpful to people that are looking to buy a boat, whether it's for the Great Loop or just going out for a day cruise, is to educate customers what are the benefits to buying a new boat. And it depends on which manufacturer you may buy a boat from, which dealership you may buy a boat from. In the case of buying a Beneteau, you get a 3-year warranty. There's a 7-year structural component to it. So there's a lot of peace of mind that goes along with buying a new boat versus a boat that's pre-owned, pre-enjoyed. You've also got the experience of having a new boat that's turnkey. You're not then having to refit it before you go on your first trip. A boat that has a 5 years old might have 5-year-old electronics. When's the last time that you bought a 5-year-old iPhone? The technology is evolving so quickly that people want the latest and greatest, especially when it's something that you're potentially going to live on for a long period of time, right?
Absolutely. So, and those are some great points. And the refit, a lot of our members do refit the electronics and things like that as they're getting ready to go. So that certainly is something that you would want to factor in. And you recommend to people to really, when you're looking at new versus pre-owned, to take a look at the total cost of ownership over a period of time. That will help you kind of make the decision on where those costs will be. So what kind of factors would you suggest they consider when they're doing that kind of a comparison?
Well, the great thing about people that are considering doing the Great Loop, for the most part, those buyers, those people that are looking for that lifestyle, half of the fun, and this is supposed to be fun, is the due diligence process of buying a boat, finding the boat that will fit the needs. And part of that due diligence is, okay, how long are we going to cut the lines and go for a boat ride? Are we going to do the loop in 6 months and wave to everything as we go by, or is this going to be a couple-year excursion? Is that the first trip? We then got to go down to the Bahamas, Caribbean, never head home again. So you have to kind of start to consider those points. And where I'm going with this is the financial model for buying a boat. Look, every boat, whether it's buying a 5-year-old boat or a brand new boat, they are going to depreciate. And what we find is that you can actually come up with a break even for how much you're looking for this trip to cost. To give an example, I'm familiar with our Beneteau, so a Swift Trawler 44, which has been a very popular boat for us. We have built over 300 of them, so it's been a boat that has definitely been enjoyed by many customers. Right now, you can buy a Swift Trawler 44 brand new with all the toys completely done for about $760,000. If you're financing the boat, that is typically about 20% down, and you're financing about $600,000 at that point. So if you look at an amortization schedule, typically your monthly payment will be about $4,300 a month. So let's say you take that same Swift Trawler 44, we've been building it for 9 years, and you look for a 2014 version. Well, I did a little poking around on Yacht World before we had this chat, and there are 3 Swift Trawler 44s for sale right now in the United States. The lowest priced boat is priced at $395,000. So if you're using that same model of 20% down, you're financing about $316,000. Gives you a monthly payment of $2,000 a month. So typically the ownership length is about 5 years that people keep these boats. We get that data from the partner banks that finance all our boats, and it's pretty readily available information. The average length of ownership for people that finance boats is 5 years. So if you look at a 5-year horizon for selling the boat, over the 5 years, that new boat, between your interest and your payments, will cost you $240,000 a year. That same 5-year-old boat with a $316,000 loan, that'll cost you $125,000. So what we're looking at basically is a delta of about $115,000. So what you're looking at is the cost of the financing for 5 years. The difference is $116,000 a year. And if you're still with me, the point we're trying to make here is, what are you getting for that additional $116,000? You're getting a new boat. You get what we talked about. You get warranties. You get the new dealer experience. But there's also some of those other tangibles like new heads, new beds. No one's slept on your boat before. No one's used the bathroom. And buying a new boat is also an experience where it's a blank canvas. No one's put a picture on the wall. No one's picked a paint color. No one's banged the boat into a dock. It's a brand new boat. It's your boat, and you can make it your own, personalize it. And that's if you're looking at this is something that you want to do. You do not have to have a boat, but you want to have a boat. And many times when you're getting into this process, you can look at it and say, okay, so for another $116,000, some of that might be worth it. You also don't know what happened to that used boat, right? You can call those they're the known unknowns. Why is that couple selling this seemingly perfect Swift Trawler 44 that's 5 years old? Do they bang it into something? Do they run aground? oh, they're saying that they've got new shafts in the boat. Well, wonder why they put new shafts in a boat that should have shafts for a very long time, right? So you start to have that doubt creep in. What happened to the boat over the first 5 years of its ownership, and some of that doubt. Hey, a new D4 diesel engine, if you had to replace that, can cost you upwards of $60,000. Well, that's half of your $116,000 difference between a new and used boat. So you could make a business case for peace of mind. And again, swift trawler people that look at the Great Loop, they end up going on this because it's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be a painful experience. And generally, if you buy a new boat, there's a lot less hassle involved with the experience.
Right, and those are some good points that people may not consider. It always gets a little bit challenging when we're talking a lot of numbers in this podcast, because you obviously are missing the visual component if this was a live seminar thing. But I
Sure.
think you made that very easy to follow. But some follow-up questions on that. Obviously, for some people that are looking for a little bit of, perhaps an older boat, it's a little bit harder to justify the cost of one that's new, and that delta becomes, a little bit more than for some people that their budget will handle. Is there a specific age of a boat? We focus on 5 years. Is there a specific age that you think the equation for buying new works best? And I know we used 5 years because that's kind of the average length that people are holding on to the swift trawlers. But, how does that equation work if you change that length of time?
Well, so to be specific, the actual length of ownership, that 5 year number, is actually of all boat loans out there right now. So it's not just swift trawlers, not just Beneteaus. It's all the boats out there. That's the average length. But you're getting on to a good point. In a past life, I dabbled in the finance world, the marine finance world, and one of the interesting truths of marine lending is that there are far fewer banks that will even finance a boat that is older than 10 years old. There are some. There are some that'll do 12 years. There are some that'll do 15 years, and then fewer still that will look at the super rare, the super high-end boats that they'll finance even beyond 15 years. But the pot of potential lenders gets extremely small after 10 years. So to answer your question directly, what's the right age of boat to buy? Well, let's take that 5-year-old boat, for example, and you're going to keep it for 5 years. So when you're ready to sell that boat, now 10 years old, buyers, they're either going to pay cash or they're going to have to find one of those few banks that will help them finance that now 10-year-old boat. And usually when you're looking to sell your boat, you're looking to sell the boat quickly. And when you've got fewer banks and fewer potential buyers out there, you can end up sitting on your 10-year-old boat a lot longer. And that's one of the realities that customers face that buy a used boat and then keep them for 5 years or longer.
Mm-hmm. And that is a great point, and I have heard that from other marine lending people, that particularly, and some of the boats we do see on the Great Loop, it's not always for someone who can afford a $500,000 boat. So we do see lots of people doing on a tighter budget. That is a very good point, and that beyond 20 years is very challenging to get the financing. So, of course, the older the boat you buy, when you turn around to go and sell it, the more limited the pool of buyers starts to become, because you're right, you may be looking for a cash buyer at that point. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it is something I think that most people don't realize.
And Kim, you're right on the money. And it's all relative, right? So let's say that that your boat is worth $100,000 at the end of 10 years. It's a great boat, sought-after boat even, but how many buyers potentially are going to spend $100,000 cash for a 10-year-old boat, whereas that could be a nice 20% deposit on a much more substantial, nicer, newer boat? A lot of people will finance at that point and use that $100,000 instead of buying a boat outright, buying a nice, shinier boat that's bigger, nicer, newer electronics, and you start the cycle all over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent point. I do want to take a moment to play a message from one of our sponsors. When we come back, though, I do have another follow-up question geared towards those who may hold on to the boat for a very short amount of time. So we'll be back in a moment.
AGLCA Admiral-sponsored Dog River Marina is located at the mouth of the Tenn-Tom Waterway in Mobile, Alabama, only 22 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. The marina encompasses 95 slips, 80 of which are sheltered. They offer a ship store, courtesy car, rental cars, 24-hour guard service, and shore power. The complex's full-service repair facility is staffed with highly trained personnel to handle everything from simple repairs to complex overhauls. For more information, visit www.dogriver.com.
We're back on Great Loop Radio. My guest today is Justin Joyner with Beneteau Powerboats. Justin, I know you just a week or so ago returned from the Miami Boat Show. Fill us in a little bit about what was happening in Miami this year.
So the Miami Boat Show is usually a great escape for the majority of the Americans that live in the colder climates that are either snowed in, frozen in, or just looking for a little bit of a suntan. So it's usually perfectly timed for a little bit of an escape. The reality is the Miami Boat Show has a great bunch of trawlers there that customers can look at, but there's all boat shapes, sizes. There are people putting 3, 4, 5, 6 outboards on day boats now, and you see a majority of those offerings at shows like the Miami Show. To be fair, usually what we find our better trawler show and probably the better selection for customers doing their due diligence early on is actually the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show earlier in November of every year. That typically brings a stronger trawler list of trawlers that are actually on display. But also you see more people from what I might describe as the flyover states that actually descend on Fort Lauderdale versus Miami every year.
Mm-hmm. So that's good to know for our listeners who perhaps are shopping for a boat. It's pretty typical for a lot of our members to visit one of the major boat shows. So if they are in the market for a trawler, Justin, you would suggest that Fort Lauderdale might be a better show for them than Miami.
In terms of selection, absolutely. And then also, another point as we get a little off on a tangent here is also when you're looking at timing for purchase. If you're really looking to get away from it all, so to speak, you usually have a date on a calendar when you're looking to start your trip. From a manufacturing perspective, usually we can have boats quicker to owners in the fall. By the time February rolls around, usually our production schedules are getting further out there, so you're looking at 9 months, maybe even a year before your custom-built trawler is ready for you, and that's just one of the realities of the seasonality of our business. Beneteau is the largest boat builder in the world. We build over 10,000 boats a year, but even our mass production doesn't allow us to build boats within a couple weeks. So it does take some time to build these big boats.
Okay, so if you're shopping and you plan to be leaving for the Great Loop shortly thereafter, you're definitely going to want to start in the fall, not in the winter when there's Miami and some of the other big boat shows as well. So excellent information, because that was something I didn't know.
It's kind of an interesting thing when you start talking to potential loopers. Typically, we hear the 3-year plan. They're on the 3-year plan. Well, what does 3 years really mean? Well, typically it really means a year and a half. And so when you finally decode that it's a year and a half, part of the education process is, if you are looking to buy a new boat, it's 9 months to a year before your boat arrives, and you probably are going to want to take a few short trips before you just cut the lines and start on the loop trip. Start a few weekend trips, a couple overnighters. And so then at that point, you probably want to do that for a couple months. So, now's the time to buy the boat, right? It's funny how that typically happens when you start talking through this process, how 3 years turns into, okay, let's go for a sea trial.
Right. Yeah, and I definitely agree with you there 100%. And we absolutely recommend that people do take some shorter trips on their boat, whether it's a brand new boat or it's new to them. Certainly it makes sense, regardless of the amount of boating experience you have, to get some experience at the helm of that specific vessel that you'll be doing the Great Loop on. So that's a great point for people to remember. And I'm also glad that you, well, first of all, thank you for allowing me that tangent to gather some information about the boat shows. But kind of getting back to the subject at hand, you mentioned kind of that 3-year plan turns into an 18-month plan. We talked about if you're holding the boat for longer, what that kind of does to the picture of buying new. What if, because we do see a lot of loopers who don't live in a place where they can frequently use a boat like a 44 Swift trawler, but want that for the Great Loop. So we do see people who plan to buy a boat for the Great Loop, spend a year or so doing the loop, and then sell the boat again. Now, some of them fall in love with the lifestyle and change their living arrangements and end up keeping the boat. But we do see a fair number who plan to keep it, a little over a year and stick with that plan. So for somebody like that, you mentioned the scary depreciation word at the beginning. Is it still really a financially viable option for most people who plan to keep the boat for only a year to buy something new as opposed to pre-owned?
Well, I would be speaking out of turn if I started talking about other manufacturers and their typical depreciation. What I do know on our Swift trawler buyers and really how those boats age, the depreciation curve is actually fairly linear. At about 5 years, when you can go on Yacht World right now, you see that the depreciation after 5 years is somewhere between 30 and 40%, which is frankly better than most. So if you bought a brand new boat, you're really only looking at, so if it's half that time, 3 years, it's half of 30%, 15. If you're looking for some simple math, you can say it's just under 10% a year. So again, it is fairly linear. I would suggest for people that really think that this is going to be a year and a half, that's all we're really committing in our life to this kind of trip. You probably really want to take even a harder look at a new boat, because when you buy used boats, you get back into that known unknown gray area where what's wrong with the boat? Okay, now I've bought a boat that doesn't have a warranty, and I've had a survey done, but until you get out there and spend a couple weeks on it, you don't really know what's wrong with the boat. And if we're on a tight schedule here and all of a sudden it has to go in for a refit for 3 months, what's that done to your time schedule? You buy a new boat, you've got warranty service from every Beneteau dealer, or any manufacturer. They look at their dealer network along the Great Loop. how many dealers can I hit along the way if I have a need for service? And when you've got a warranty and you've got a dealer that sees a lot of these boats, usually you're back out on the water much quicker than if it's one of the oddity boats that can be out there.
Sure. Justin, you mentioned the idea of, if something breaks and it's a previously owned boat and you don't have that warranty. So that's certainly kind of a hidden cost, if you will, of buying a previously owned boat. And we talked earlier about, refitting an older boat. So are there any other kind of unexpected costs that people maybe don't consider when they're, balancing the new versus used equation?
Well, sure. When you're buying a used boat, you get a survey, and depending on the condition of the boat, you can be responsible for any number of things. You can be a haul out to do bottom paint. Will you have to do some major motor service? Are you going to spend a lot of time detailing the boat? And what we find more often than not, and I can tell from experience with our after sales department, is, again, we've got 300 of these Swift Trawler 44s out there, and when they do transact on the secondhand market, what we always get a lot of requests for? New bed cushions, new bilge plumbing, new head components. So even though, a survey might say, oh, everything's in working order, looks clean, well, guess what? You do that first couple trips, and all of a sudden you're rebuilding your entire holding tank system, not because maybe there's anything wrong with it, but what is that smell, right?
Right.
This is supposed to be fun, enjoyable. I'm not going to spend the next year on a boat that has this, maybe it's a questionable smell on board. You're going to take care of that before you take the trip, right? So again, it's that, when you get to the end of how much did this cost, sometimes, I go back to the beginning of our conversation when you look at, okay, what's the additional cost of doing this? That number gets much tighter than people realize, and it's really worth going into any boat purchase with your eyes open. Find the right consultant. I could plug our Beneteau dealers. Find the right person to really help you through your purchase decision, and really has your best interest in mind, because again, it can get costly quickly if you're buying a used boat, but the costs are up front really when you buy a new one.
Right. And I think that's a great place to wrap it up for today, Justin. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge on the new boat market with us. We appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Well, and to plug Trawler Fest real quickly, we have boats at the Trawler Fest in Stewart this up in March, and if you're around in the Florida area, we'd love to see you and visit with you and start a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for plugging Trawler Fest as well. I was there earlier in the week. And if you have not been to the Stewart Trawler Fest, it's in a beautiful facility, and lots going on there this weekend. So hopefully some of you will come down and you'll see Justin there and many others as well. So Justin, again, thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us again this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of Great Loop Radio. Until then, safe cruising.